Hi, I'm John F. Allen.
And I'm R.J. Sullivan.
And we're the Two Towers.
So, episode 3, Lamentus, was written by Bisha K. Ali, and starts with the TVA being distracted as the variant arrives at their headquarters and attempts to find the timekeepers, but is followed by Loki. They are attacked by Renslayer, and Loki uses the Tempad to teleport them both to 2077, Lamentus 1, moon that is being crushed by a planet. The Tempad runs out of power, and the variant, who goes by the name Sylvie, agrees to work with Loki to charge it. They sneak aboard a train bound for the Ark, an excavation spaceship that could recharge the Tempad. But Loki gets drunk and draws attention to them, and this leads to a fight with guards who throw him off the train, and of course Sylvie follows him, only to find the Tempad has been broken. The duo continue on foot, intending to commandeer the Ark so that they can escape from Lamentus 1 before it is destroyed. On the way, Sylvie reveals that the TVA workers are actually variants of people from Earth. Loki and Sylvie fight their way through guards and a crowd of people attempting to board the Ark, but meteors from the oncoming planet destroy it before they can board. Now, this particular episode to me was interesting. It goes a long way into planting the seeds for Sylvie and Loki to bond. But it also gives us a little bit of an insight into who Sylvie is and how she varies from Loki. Even though they're variants of the true Loki, it's interesting to see how much they are alike and how, in so many ways, they are very different. And I thought that as you had mentioned before, the sets, the CGI generated sets and settings were amazing. They did a great job of that. I felt like I was transported to some foreign place, and they really did a good job of portraying that on the screen. What did you think of this episode, RJ?
Yeah, you called it. First, I want to take a moment to find out if you know anything more about the writer Bishi Ali. I notice on the website here it says she's the head writer for the upcoming streaming television series Ms. Marvel for Disney Plus. So, it's great just because sadly it's still unusual, but to see so many women involved in a production, especially a singular woman directing all 6 episodes is great to see. And then to see that this is a writer who's not only written this particular episode but is apparently going to be involved in more Disney Plus Marvel stuff. Definitely worth a mention before I get into it. But when I was talking about the CGI and the artwork and the vision on the screen, this was the episode I was thinking of. If I remember, this ends with an extended tracking shot of Loki and Sylvie running with a crowd through the streets of this completely alien city as meteors are falling and destroying the buildings all around them. And it goes uncut for, I want to say, 4 or 5 minutes, something like that. It's absolutely jaw-dropping and cinematic. Definitely not something you would expect on a streaming TV show. It's just a whole other level. But the entire series looks great, but that was a particular kind of, some might say it was a bit show-offy, but I mean, I loved it. I thought it looked wonderful, and it truly did feel like this was taking place somewhere that could not be created with sets. and then of course they were being destroyed, and things were on fire, and I mean, there was all this chaos going on all around them. So the fact that it was all within the computer gave them a lot of flexibility to do some really incredible things. Yeah, this episode was one of those real standout moments of the entire series for me. I just thought that was absolutely amazing. Way above what I would come to expect from a TV show, a network TV show, let alone a streaming service. So this was one of the highlights for me.
Yes, it was a highlight for me as well, which goes back to what I was saying about why the lines between, film or feature films and television shows it's dwindling. It's going away at a faster pace than some people are maybe comfortable with, but it is going away because of the way that movies are produced now and television shows are produced now, and how we get them has changed. And of course, the affordability of a lot of this top-notch CGI has helped in that regard as well. One other thing that should be mentioned when we're talking about the CGI, that this is not the first time that we've seen this. This was something that was heavily used in The Mandalorian. They did not have all of those create the set that went on and on for you to see all the mountains and all the other stuff like that. The set was very limited in its actual real world area. But with the CGI technology, they could give you a panoramic view of just about anywhere they wanted to transport you. And that's something that they use to great effect in this particular series, especially in this particular episode. So kudos to them for that. Next, we have episode 4, The Nexus Event. This was written by Eric Martin. We see Sylvie telling Loki that she escaped from the TVA as a child. They form a romantic bond, and let me say that the romantic bond is different than what, in my opinion, is different than what you would normally see in a film or a television show, made different just by the fact that they are different variants of the same person, which even though they don't look alike or anything like that, it would just be kind of weird, falling for the female or male version of yourself. That was something that was very interesting to me and how this developed, but I think they did a good job in that. Anyway, this bond creates a unique branch timeline and alerts the TVA to find and arrest them before Lamentis One is destroyed. Mobius leaves Loki in a time loop of a bad memory he has with Sif, while Sylvie unlocks B-15's memories to prove that B-15 is a variant. Renslayer tells Mobius that C-20 died from a mental breakdown, but Mobius finds a recording of Renslayer interrogating a mentally sound C-20 who insists that the TVA workers are all variants. Mobius frees Loki from the time loop, but Renslayer confronts them and has Mobius pruned. Just so you would know, having someone pruned means that they hit you with the bop gun or stick, as it were, and you are supposedly disintegrate and you are no longer in existence. But we're going to learn that that's not the case. So Renslayer takes Loki and Sylvie to the Timekeepers, who order Loki and Sylvie to be deleted, hence pruned. But with B-15's help, Loki and Sylvie defeat Renslayer and the Timekeepers' guards. Sylvie beheads one of the Timekeepers, but discovers that they are androids before a recovered Renslayer prunes Loki. Sylvie overpowers Renslayer and demands the truth. In a mid-credit scene, Loki awakens surrounded by other Loki variants. And let me say that I really enjoyed this episode, and this episode was one of my favorites, not just because of the action, but because of the way that it flowed from beginning to end and how you see the characters develop. You see character development for Loki, you see character development for Sylvie, you see character development for Mobius, and you're able to see character development for Renslayer. And you're getting a better understanding of who these characters are outside of what you're expected to believe about them, and you're seeing them discover things about themselves that they didn't really realize. This episode also talks about friendship between Mobius and Loki, and if you know anything about Loki from the MCU, um, anything prior to Thor, the second Thor movie, I think it was, or the third Thor movie, I think it's the third Thor movie, yeah. You notice that Loki doesn't have any friends. Loki will turn his back and kill his own brother, let alone have a friend. So we get to see development, character developments here that this variant Loki is experiencing, and it rings true to the events and all the things that have gone on and all the things he learns about the true Loki and what happened to that version. But we also, in that mid-credit scene, are exposed to the Loki variants from the comics. Kid Loki, the hammer-wielding Loki, alligator Loki, and the true 1960s introduction Loki, the one from the Thor comics and the one who was responsible for bringing the Avengers together in the comics, that Loki. And while that was over the top, the costume design was very spot on to the comics, and it was played over the top. And that particular Loki was played by Richard E. Grant, which I had mentioned before that I would get into. It all came together, and the MCU at this point with this series and this particular episode wasn't afraid to get comic booky. They let their hair down and decided that we are going to go for it, and we set it up enough to where our fans will appreciate it. Those deep diving comic book nerds like myself who read the comics over the years will get a great kick out of this, but it will still be entertaining for the more mainstream audience who is just now being introduced to these characters through these films and television shows. And I think they really did a great job with that. What were your thoughts on this episode, RJ?
Yeah, I liked this is where they really were playing around with time paradoxes and time loops and how far they can take things with the time travel situations, really giving the audience a sense of just how crazy you can take the plot when you're dealing with time travel. Doctor Who, of course, has done this in the past. Plenty of novels have done this before. Some really good movies have played with this sort of thing, but they're really showing that pretty much everything is on the table when you're dealing with time travel. And if I'm being honest, when Mobius was pruned, or they killed his variant, and you thought that he was dead, I thought he was dead simply because I did not think that. To me, it made perfect sense. Owen Wilson would commit to 4 episodes, but he has better things to do than get tied down to any kind of a long-term series. So I was actually surprised later on in the next episode when he comes back again. I thought, okay, well, we were very entertained by him, and he he brought his A game while he was on, and unfortunately, this isn't something he wanted to be tied down to. But I was surprised when he pops back up later. So that was really cool. So apparently, because he does make it to the end of this series, and apparently he'll be going on probably into the movies before we get into season 2. So I'm pretty excited that we have actors of that caliber sticking around for these sorts of things. Let's see, there was something else I was going to point out here, but yeah, I don't remember when the meme started. I think it was probably next week when we got deeper into the Loki variants, but alligator Loki and was certainly brand new to me. I did recognize that they were using the Loki costume right out of the comic book, which I thought was really cool. The idea of various variants of a character made perfect sense to me, and I like the fact that they brought that in as an aspect really into episode 5. They just sort of teased it here, so I'll save the rest of that. The other thing I want to talk about is what you were hinting at a little bit. Even as a viewer, I wasn't entirely sure how reformed Loki was. We certainly didn't know where Sylvie was coming from exactly. There was always that sense of, is he playing another game? Is this all a con for him? Is he going to turn around and turn on everybody? Because that's what Loki always does. That's what he did most notably in the second Thor movie, when you thought that he was allying with his brother, and then he just didn't. So that was always in the back of my head, and I thought that they did a really good job of bringing up, okay, when's he going to turn on us? When's he going to become the bad guy? And that was neat to kind of keep that as the question mark throughout the this episode. Particularly, they were playing with that. Will Loki actually change, or is he going to do what we expect? This is where we finally made it uniquely about Loki. And then, of course, that carries into episodes 5 and 6. So I'll stop there for now.
All right. Well, with that being said, I think that it's funny, and this is not like a, controversial point or whatnot. It's just, I think that it's funny, and it also lends to the idea that people see things differently. The surprises for you were not surprises for me, and I thought that's just so fascinating to me, because it's like I kind of figured that was going to happen. And it's just unique, and not unique, but it's, I guess, something that really is cool about our show, and that I can come and see things from a different perspective than you, and then we can meet somewhere in the middle. And I think that there'll be people who, like me, weren't surprised by a lot of those things, and others who will be. And it just gives you a different perspective from where people see things. So I thought that I think that that's interesting. Maybe it's more interesting to me than it it should be, but it is interesting to me nonetheless. So that being said, we are going to carry on for episode 5, Journey into Mystery. That particular episode was written by Tom Kaufman. Okay. So, Renslayer tells Sylvie that when Loki was pruned, he was sent to the void at the end of time, from which nothing has ever returned. They deduce that the TVA's true nature is hiding beyond the void. TVA mascot Miss Minutes stalls for time until TBS troopers surround Sylvie, who prunes herself and soon meets Mobius in the void. After interrogating B-15, Renslayer plans to reach the TVA's true creator. Meanwhile, the other Loki variants tell Loki that a massive cloud-like creature called Aleo destroys everything in the void. After encountering a second Loki group that devolves into infighting, classic Loki helps Loki, Alligator Loki, and Kid Loki escape. They come across Mobius and Sylvie, and Mobius returns to the TVA using a TemPad, but that Sylvie brought with her. Sylvie attempts to enchant Elio while Loki distracts it, but they fail until classic Loki sacrifices himself, creating an illusion of Asgard to draw Elio's attention. Loki and Sylvie successfully enchant Elio together, and the creature shows them the way to a citadel beyond the void. Now, if anyone who's a big Thor fan knows, Journey into Mystery, not named that by accident. That was where we first are introduced to Thor. That was the comic book before it became the comic book known as Thor back in the 60s. So, definitely a deep cut there. I liked seeing these other Loki variants. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. We even see a cameo of Throg, which is the frog version of Thor, when in a different timeline, Loki transformed Thor into a frog. So, yeah, I know it's kind of crazy and creepy and cool and all those good things, but I just love it. It just definitely is something that is really cool for me. This particular episode also shows how the bond between Sylvie and Loki has progressed. It also shows the bond between Loki and Mobius. If for the first time this is the episode where I believe Loki when he was saying what he was saying, which normally I don't believe anything he said. And RJ and I were joking that Tom Hiddleston does such a great job playing Loki that if I met him in real life, I'd take everything he told me with a grain of salt. So right. That being said, it's just really, really cool to see and experience that. The actors brought a powerful performance to make you, in the midst of all the fantastical things that were going on, to actually feel the characterizations as they unfold in the character development. And that's a testament not only to the writing, but also to the performances of these actors who did an amazing job on this series and specifically on this episode. So kudos to them for that. What were your thoughts on this, RJ?
Sure. So I did get the reference to Journey into Mystery. I've seen images of that comic. I know it goes back into the 60s. It was a title. I assumed it was a short story type thing. Never really looked at an issue. If I'm being totally honest, I've probably seen a dozen Thor comics my entire life. So the alligator Loki and the kid Loki and all the rest of that, I just took it at face value. I got a big kick out of it. Those elements were a lot of fun. I was glad that it was one of those. Disney's really good at being able to create those pop culture moments that get memed and shared all over social media. Alligator Loki was certainly no exception there. We certainly saw plenty of him the week that this came out. It was a kind of a minor spoiler for me before I got to actually watch the episode, but that's okay. It's not like it was vital to the plot. I really enjoyed the humor that they got out of that, and I absolutely agree that this was the turning point with the character where we felt like he was actually having a moment, and that he was coming around to reevaluating his priorities at this point. And of course, everything was perfectly set up for the final episode where we knew that we were going to have a lot of revelations, and I was anxious to see where they went.
All right. So one other thing before we get into episode 6, our finale, Kid Loki is in the comics was a member of the Young Avengers, and they are continuously introducing these kid characters because Young Avengers is coming. It hasn't been completely confirmed. It has been hinted at by Kevin Feige and others at Marvel Studios, but I know it's coming. You don't introduce all these characters, especially the ones that are going to be introduced in the shows that are coming out, without having an end game, as it were. They've introduced Stature, who is Scott Lang's daughter, Cassie, who's a teenager now, and will have abilities to shrink and grow like her father. They've introduced Elijah Bradley and Isaiah Bradley's grandson, who was the Patriot, who was a member of Young Avengers. They are going to be introducing, well, they have introduced the twins of Wanda and Vision, and one is Wiccan. He has powers like his mother, and the other is Speed, who has powers like his uncle Quicksilver. And then they have also introduced, or are going to be introducing, Kate Bishop, Hawkeye, protege of the Clint Barton character, and Miss Marvel, who ends up becoming a protege of Captain Marvel. So it'll be interesting to see how they do that. They've got now introduced Kid Loki, so we'll see how that turns out. They're really putting together the Young Avengers, and I can't wait to see how that comes together. It's sure to be awesome. But I just wanted to throw that little tidbit of trivia out there and hopes for the series, The Young Avengers, which I think would be cool to be a feature film, but also could be adapted into a series, much like Loki and the others for Disney Plus. So we are at the finale, episode 6, For All Time Always. This episode was written by Michael Waldron and Eric Martin. We find Renslayer leaving on a mission to find free will after Miss Minutes gives her information from the TVA's creator, He Who Remains. B-15 proves to TVA troopers that they are variants by showing them a Renslayer variant who is a school vice principal. Meanwhile, at the Citadel at the end of time, He Who Remains tells Loki and Sylvie that he ended a multiversal war between his variants by using Alioth to destroy alternate timelines and create the TVA to maintain this peace. As he has grown weary, he offers them a choice: kill him and risk another multiversal war, or replace him in overseeing the TVA in a singular timeline. Sylvie wants to kill him, but Loki pleads with her to stop. They kiss, but Sylvie sends Loki back to TVA headquarters, after which she kills He Who Remains, unleashing a multiverse with alternate timelines that the TVA cannot prune. And at TVA headquarters, Loki warns Mobius and B-15 about He Who Remains variants, but they do not recognize him, and Loki sees that a statue of one of the variants has replaced statues of the Time Keepers. Now, this is interesting because in the comics, He Who Remains is Kang, or a version of Kang. So you have Kang, who is a he's a descendant of Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four. A lot of people don't know that, especially those who haven't read the comics. But yes, Kang the Conqueror is one iteration or one variant of Nathaniel Richards, who is a descendant of Reed Richards. And that's what makes the introduction of Kang, of He Who Remains, who shall be known as Kang the Conqueror, coming soon, that much more interesting. And Jonathan Majors did a great job playing this character because we get to see some of the base developments for this character and how this is going to tie into adventures that the Avengers had, but also adventures that Fantastic Four had in the comics as they come to life on the big screen and on the small screen. So some of Kang the Conqueror's variant identities were Rama Tut, who was an ancient Egyptian pharaoh. Also Immortus, who was a future version of He Who Remains. And Iron Lad, who was a member of the Young Avengers. So they're setting up so many franchises for the MCU that it is just amazing. And when you have deep cut comic book nerds like me who are seeing all this unfold, this makes this even more juicier for us because we're like, ooh, 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 now they can do this. And ooh, 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 now they can do that. And that is like, you know, when you're our age, when you're in your 50s and you were like a little kid reading these comic books, you ever imagined that they were going to have movies and television shows like this, you know, based upon what you were reading at the time? I mean, let's face it, we had Wonder Woman with Linda Carter, The Incredible Hulk with Lou Ferrigno and Bill Bixby. We had the Superman, the movie, you know, with Christopher Reeve. We had the reruns of Batman, the 1960s show with Adam West and Burt Ward. That was as good as it got for a long while. And then now you see all of the stuff that we are getting now and how well orchestrated and how well plotted out it is and planned out it is. And your mind is blown because this is like, oh my God, wow, am I living in an alternate reality, you know, where this is actually happening? And just one more thing about the character of He Who Remains, who is going to be reintroduced as Kang the Conqueror. He will be making his future feature film debut in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, due out in 2023. Still played by Jonathan Majors. So this is going to be very interesting to see. I'm all in. I'm just waiting for how this is going to tie into the Fantastic Four, a film which Kevin Feige announced last year. And I am so geeked for it all. I think that when we see Kang as like one of the big bads within this phase 4, it's all going to be set up for when the Fantastic Four are introduced and we get the big man himself, Galactus, which that in and of itself is going to be just like one of the greatest things ever. I mean, I'm going to have all kinds of geekgasms over that, and I will be that much closer to drawing Social Security. What are your thoughts on this finale, RJ?
Yeah, so kind of echoing some of the things you said. You know, you talked about things that you were able to see coming that didn't surprise you. This ending did not surprise me. I was aware that that a What If TV series is very soon. I think it's next. and I had a feeling that we were trying to set up that structure. So the fact that this splits off into various multiverse timelines at the end, I'm like, oh well, that's absolutely perfect for that plan. And the fact that my favorite character, Spider-Man, is going to be doing some multiversing in his movie for sure. They've got they now have all the backstory and structure to either narrate it or take you through it. I'm curious to see what specific narrative device they're going to use, but they didn't do all this just for the purpose of justifying a what if. I think they could have a lot of fun with this, having a watch your light character or a time traveler character actually take you through. I envision something like that. As far as He Who Remains, until we looked at these summaries, I don't recall him being called that. I could tell looking at him that we were trying for Kang the Conqueror. I was aware of that character. One of my oversized, I think it's Spider-Man and Iron Man team up books has Kang the Conqueror in it. Dictator from I think the 32nd century or something like that. I've always found him kind of interesting. He's certainly got an interesting look, and I could see how they were tapping into that with this character. I guess I assumed that's who it was, and so I guess the fact that that's going to be revealed later isn't really going to surprise me all that much. I like the way this wrapped up. It all worked out at the end, and yet it left me wanting to see more. I was under the impression that the decision to add a second season was made kind of late in the game. So I'll be curious to see where they take the story from here, but I like the fact that they've loosened this up and they can do a lot of different things with it. And I'm going to piggyback on another one of your comments. So you're absolutely correct that technology prevented us from having anything but the most rudimentary versions of our favorite characters. Spider-Man was a not great TV series. The Incredible Hulk was a very good TV series, but it was a very powered down Hulk that became the pop culture version. I can remember in 2001 when the Hulk trailer was for the first movie went out, people were like, he's not supposed to be that strong, and I'm like, oh god, so because they were thinking of the TV show. They had no, these were people that never picked up a comic book and didn't realize we're now course correcting the things we couldn't do the first time. And you still hear people talk about Linda Carter's Wonder Woman as some vision of perfection that needs to be matched up to. Guys, I'm rewatching it on HBO Max. It had a lot of problems. Okay, listen, it was not the perfect Wonder Woman. It wasn't even close. I liked it. It was the best we could do, but we're doing a lot better now, even in spite of the 1984 movie that I know that people feel very mixed about. I think we're much closer to what the comic creators had in mind than we were 40 years ago. But I'll go even further than that. I knew superhero movies, getting them right was a matter of getting the technology. But you could not have told me that we would get, I don't even think I would have bet on a Thor movie or an Iron Man movie. I knew we'd have a Spider-Man movie as soon as possible, and we did. I knew we'd get an X-Men, probably a Captain America, but I certainly did not think we would get anywhere as deep diving into these comics as where we are now and where we're going. If I'm being honest, I'm not sure entirely how the Eternals is going to play to a pop culture audience. I'm uncertain about Master of Kung Fu. We are diving really deep now into material that I would have never ever thought would be considered TV and movie material. And I could have said that 10 years ago, that they were already making things I would not have thought would have been seriously considered for a movie. So yeah, we've gone so far beyond where I thought they could do, or where I thought a pop culture audience would care. So they're definitely going to try and push and see how far that they can take it, and it's going to be interesting to see how far they go. So this was, by all accounts, a very successful miniseries, and Marvel just keeps cranking them out.
All right. Well, let me say this about that. After seeing the first Avengers film, I was sold. There was no doubt in my mind that we were going to get all of this at some point. Now, how much of it, how soon, and how great? Yes, I was with you. I was like, I didn't know. But that it was coming, I knew. Because when you look at the scope of the Avengers film, the first Avengers film, and you see all of the little pieces of it come together, and you see that it flowed from the Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk film, and the Captain America film, the first Avenger, you get a sense of, oh shit, they're really going to do this, and they're going to do it big. And as far as the Eternals and Shang-Chi, having those films be made, it wasn't what I would have thought that they would have done for feature films. I did think that those would have been more like your streaming service shows, because those characters aren't as popular as some of the other ones. But then again, when you think about it, neither was Iron Man, who, if you didn't read comics, most people didn't know who the hell Iron Man was. And then when RDJ nailed that character and created that franchise, and it spawned all these other franchises, at the end of the day, I don't find any of this any hard to believe at all. It's almost like I said, we're living in some type of multiverse where this stuff is actually happening. It's so awesome. And I will say this, we are going to next get Spider-Man Far From Home? No, what is this? The new one.
Yeah, I was trying to think of it, and I said the same thing, and I know that's not right. Let me look it up.
So we're going to get the new Spider-Man film by the end of this year, and then we're going to get the Doctor Strange film.
It's no. I'm sorry, it's No Way Home.
No Way Home. Okay, so we got No Way Home, Spider-Man No Way Home, that comes out at the end of this year, and then we've got the Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness coming out. And so the whole multiverse thing is right there, and they've already got it all planned out. Then where I stand at Shang-Chi is basically Marvel's version of Enter the Dragon with a whole bunch of other stuff added into it. So from a cinematic standpoint, I can see why they went there with that. But again, not something that I'm like, oh, this is sure to be the surefire hit that, say some of the other films were. Because I think that the MCU has had some near misses, not something that's like just bad, but something that there's a couple films that I was like, okay, they're pretty good. And of left it at that. But it's interesting. I'm excited. I couldn't be any more excited right now at this moment than I am for all that's coming, and I can't wait. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in to this episode, and I hope you enjoyed the Loki series as much as either of us did, at least. And if you want to know what's going on with me, give me a visit at my website, which is johnfallenauthor.com. You can find out everything that's going on with me, from classes that I've been teaching virtually to signing up to my for my newsletter, and checking out all the things that are coming from me down the line. Where can they find you, RJ?
Find me at rjsullivanfiction.com, and I am getting back into the writing groove and working on some new stuff now that I have finally got my old titles back out there. I've not been able to do a lot of shows yet, but I was very surprised that the new Complete Adventures of Blue Schaefer moved as well as it did. It's an omnibus recap of 3 different works, and apparently people are pretty excited about it so far. So I'll be looking to schedule some more stuff in 2022, maybe a couple of shows at the end of the year. Kind of depends on what the next couple months has in store, frankly, but it could happen. Who knows? But that's where you learn more about me.
All right. So just in case you'd like to geek out with some other friendly nerds and geeks out there in a social setting, we have a community that's one of our sponsors called OG Nerds. It's a community for nerds of a certain age, 40 and over. If you are 18 and over, you're more than welcome, but we do the real old school perspective on a lot of all the things that geeks and nerds like us like. So come check us out on Facebook there. And that wraps up this episode of The Two Towers. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to subscribe to our channel so you can get every episode that we air. And until next time, stay nerdy. The Two Towers Talk Show is sponsored in part by OG Nerds, a new social media community dedicated to nerds of a certain age, 40 and over, although all are welcome. Members are encouraged to share articles and links on their favorite nerdy topics such as animation, anime, art, books, writing, comics, manga, movies, music, sports, tech, science, TV, video games, RPGs, and more. Be sure to visit them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
The Two Towers Talk Show is sponsored in part by Showtime Cinema in Mooresville, Indiana. Their friendly staff is always willing to go the extra mile to make your movie-going experience an enjoyable and memorable one. Enjoy the comfort of their new cushioned seating in their spacious auditoriums, and while you're there, be sure to stop by the concession stand and purchase some popcorn where real butter topping is an option. They're located at 300 South Bridge Street in Mooresville, Indiana. We hope to see you at the movies.